Hello and welcome back to Tac Intel Tuesday. I'm Mike Shelby, a former Intelligence NCO and contractor, and my goal each week is to give you some knowledge and a task that improves your preparedness and security. Today, we are talking about intelligence collection for mission planning, and I'm going to describe a very simple and effective process for you to follow that will take you from being in the dark to being situationally aware. So grab a pen and paper and let's take some notes. By the way, I have a bunch of area study and intelligence training materials that I am giving away for free. I'm going to give them away until they run out. I have a few hundred of these. Go sign up for email updates at areaintelligence.com, and I will email you as soon as I'm ready to start sending these things out. Now let's start today's lesson with a very critical point. Intelligence gathering is a misnomer because intelligence is not gathered. Information is gathered, and then intelligence is developed from that information. So information is raw and unverified. It could be good information or bad. Sometimes it is ugly. Intelligence, on the other hand, is information that has been assessed for intelligence value and for its relevance to the mission. It's been verified, or its veracity has been assessed. It's been combined with other pieces of information to provide us with a deeper understanding about the enemy and his plans, or our battle space, or the operational environment. So all the things that surround us but aren't us and are also not the enemy. And just remember, we don't make decisions based on information. We make decisions based on intelligence, and this is a crucial learning point. So anytime we're talking about intelligence production, we actually start with operations in mind. And that's because we have to understand the mission before we can start producing intelligence to support the mission. So in the Army, the commander would say effectively, we're going to go here and we're going to do this thing, and here is the intended effect or end state. This is what we want to accomplish here. And that's something called commander's intent, and oftentimes that was good enough for the intelligence section to get to work. Now, we're not in the Army anymore. We're not going to Baghdad or Kandahar. We are in our neighborhoods. So my first question to you is this: what mission do you expect to undertake during an emergency or some kind of SHTF situation? Even if you don't have a specific mission in mind, we could generally say, I'm going to link up with my neighbors or my neighborhood watch, and we are going to make sure that bad guys don't mess with us. Or maybe there's some catastrophic event, and you say, I live in the city. This is not really where I want to be when this thing's going down, so we're going to bug out and leave the city. That is a mission. That is something that can be accomplished, something that you can do. So choose one of those as your mission, or select whatever mission you have if it's not one of those, because we always start with the mission in mind. Last week, we discussed intelligence gaps. Those are pieces of information that we need to know, but don't know yet. And I will link to that video in the description below if you haven't seen it. It is a crucial part of this whole process. When it comes to intelligence collection for mission planning, the very first thing we need to do is identify those intel gaps. What are the pieces of information that we need? So for our neighborhood watch mission, my first intel gap is going to be, which of my neighbors will cooperate with me? And what skills and equipment do they have for this mission? Now, ideally, those are questions we're answering well before this mission, and that's why we do an area study. Just as a reminder, we do an area study because we need to find out two things. Number one, what am I up against? And number two, what do I have to work with? So what are those threats and hazards that will impact me? Because that's what we prepare for. And then what are the assets and resources that I have in my area? What do I have to work with? Because those are going to be the allies and strategic advantages that I can accumulate when I'm trying to deal with all this bad stuff. If you have more bad stuff than good stuff, it's better to find that out sooner rather than later by doing your area study. And by the way, go to areaintelligence.com and sign up for the free stuff I'm going to be sending you here in the next couple weeks. All right, then we move on to the second mission, which is for those who intend to leave the city or bug out of the area. What pieces of information do you need? What are your intel gaps? So right off the bat, first, I'm looking at distance from my location to my retreat. And then I'm going to be looking at terrain and figuring out all the ways I can feasibly get from point A to point B. And I want to know which areas I should avoid at all costs. I may also look at refueling or resupply locations depending on how far away this place is. There are lots of intel gaps, and we could probably spend all day on this, but you will want to sit down and write out a list of every intel gap that you can think of, every intelligence gap, every piece of information that you need in order to plan out this mission. all the things that you don't know but need to know. Because those answers are the information that we need to collect. And we call these collection requirements. So an intel gap is a piece of information you need, and then it becomes a collection requirement so that it can be tasked out for collection. So now that we've identified these pieces of information that we need to collect, these collection requirements, we move on to collection. And there are 4 primary intelligence gathering disciplines. There are several more out there, but these are the 4 where I highly recommend you build your skills. And I recommend that you start with open source intelligence, or OSINT. And that's for 2 reasons. First, open source intelligence information is readily available. There's literally a world of information at your fingertips online. This is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of time to information ratio. You spend a little time and you can get a lot of intelligence information. Now, the second reason why I recommend starting off with open source intelligence is because it can be automated. We can use tools that will automate the collection or aggregate all this information for us. And then all we have to do is just monitor those information streams. So there are tools like Google Alerts and if this, then that. And there's a ton of other examples where you can plug in keywords like the name of your town or subdivision, the name of your sheriff or sheriff's office, local police chief or police department, and you can stay up to date on these things. You can also follow specific websites like local news. And then you can get this daily roll-up or even real-time updates whenever a news source publishes information that matches your criteria. So my advice right off the bat, start with OSINT. Now, personally, my favorite intelligence discipline is human intelligence, or HUMINT. I'm a big proponent of building your local intelligence network for 2 reasons. First, HUMINT sources are taskable, which is to say that I can ask them specific questions. I can't really ask signals intelligence specific questions, but I can ask a human a specific question. I can also task a human to go and get access to the information that I don't have. Those HUMINT sources know other people where they can get information from. So building your local intel network is a gigantic strategic advantage when it comes to producing actionable information. And the second reason is because if the power goes out or the internet goes down, as they often do during natural disasters and emergencies, I still have sources of information who can use radios or other communications devices to continue passing me information. In the Army, we said every soldier is a sensor, and that meant that every soldier has an obligation to pass on information. And so every neighbor, every member of my community is also a sensor. And I'm failing in my job as an intel guy if I don't have them reporting real-time information to me, especially during a disaster. Next, we'll move on to imagery intelligence, or IMINT. Drones are probably the most useful collection asset we have here, but we can also include things like photos and videos, just like what you would take with your cell phone. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and so we can talk about salute reports and calling in information over the radio, but I don't want a minute-long exposition of what you're seeing. Just send me a photo or video of this thing, of what's going on, if you're able, so that I can see it for myself. We can launch a drone, get that bad boy up in the air, then get eyes on whatever we need to check on. Is this bridge still up? What's causing all that smoke over there? Where do those gunshots come from? Imagery intelligence, super important. And lastly, the 4th intelligence discipline that I highly recommend you develop skills in is signals intelligence. A couple weeks ago, I did a whole video on SIGINT, and I will drop that video link in the description. Briefly, for our purposes, SIGINT is the ability to identify, listen into, and direction find radio frequencies. So that could be from radio stations. It could be from radio communications like walkie-talkies and ham radio. It could be Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signals. There's a lot of other stuff covered in SIGINT that I also describe in the video. So your task for this week is, number 1, figure out what your SHTF mission is, or what it is that you are trying to accomplish. Then you move on and identify your intelligence gaps. So identify all the pieces of information that you need to know in order to do mission planning, but you don't know. Number 3 is generate and list those out as collection requirements. Our intel gaps become collection requirements, which then can be tasked out. These are specific pieces of information that we are tasking to be collected. Number 4 is identify which of these 4 intelligence disciplines are capable of satisfying those requirements. For instance, if you're trying to figure out if a bridge is down, Obviously, we can use imagery intelligence, IMINT. We can send a drone up. Potentially, we could leverage human intelligence sources. So we could call our buddy who's a trucker, or call up our friend at the Department of Transportation, or call up our buddy in the sheriff's office and see if they have information about the status or the condition of that bridge. If we are trying to figure out what that fire is over there, we could send a drone up. We could leverage human sources potentially if I know a guy who lives over there. So figure out what it is you're trying to collect, what piece of information you're trying to collect, and then just figure out which of these 4 intelligence disciplines is appropriate for us to use in trying to collect this information. And then if you can do this during an emergency, if you can follow this simple process, then you can plan better missions faster, you can be safer, you can have an incredible strategic advantage going into any disaster, regardless of what it is, because you have the ability to identify what you don't know but need to know, and then go and collect that information, add it to our knowledge, and then use this for mission planning. As always, if you want to spend 3 days with me in the Tactical Intelligence course, I will teach you these skills, and you will get direct, hands-on experience building these intelligence systems so that you can go back home and build them for yourself. My next 3 courses are coming up in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Little Rock, Arkansas, and Austin, Texas. You can go to grayzonestore.com, or you can hit my course schedule link in the description below. If you like this week's Tac Intel Tuesday video and you want to see more, then go ahead and hit those subscribe and like buttons, and I just might do another. And lastly here, thanks for watching, and until next time, be well and stay out front.